Hey fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Tennis, where we're gonna look at some pro player specs, Sabalenka, Fonseca, so stay tuned for that. And we're also gonna look at what happens next week, but first we need to summarize the past week in tennis, so I hope you're ready. So this week was all about surprises, not in a way that these guys come from out of nowhere. We have João Fonseca from Brazil putting Brazilian tennis on the forefront again. Very exciting, 17 years old, hitting a big ball, a big promise. Obviously, it's very easy to hype a player like that too soon, especially if a nation is really behind him. And I know you Brazilian tennis fans out there, you are strong and you really want to see this guy succeed, as do I. I really wish him the best. And it was excellent to see him perform so well. Fonseca went to the quarterfinals, but in Doha we had Jakob Mensik go all the way to the final where he lost to Khachanov. But we'll get to that later. You might ask, if you're a follower of Tennis Nerd, you know there's a lot of racket talk. I posted part of my collection, whatever you want to call it, on my Instagram account. You can see it here. There are a lot of rackets. I get rackets for demo. I've been trading, buying, selling, doing everything around rackets for quite a long time now, so this is always fluctuating. I have some I keep, but the rest is just like buy, sell, trade a little bit. And it looks crazy, but it's kind of part of my life now, and that's how it goes. If you want a more in-depth video of the rackets I have, we can of course do that. Let me know in the comments. But Fonseca's racket is not something I have in my possession, but thanks to you guys who know João and who were at the tournament, also some WhatsApp group I heard, I got some specs there, and it's a pretty heavy bat, but nothing crazy in terms of swing weight. He uses what I understand to be the Yonex V-Core 98, the SV edition, because that had a 1620 pattern, a little bit denser. Then they moved over to 1619, which has happened with several models across brands, that they want to, open up the pattern and give more rec players a little bit more lift. But there are many players that still prefer that denser pattern. You have also the E-Zone, for example, that used to be denser 1620 is now 1619. Of course, just saying the mains and the crosses, do not talk about how evenly spaced or the drill pattern of the holes. So it might still be a dense 1619 or an open 1620, as you can see with the arrow kind of. So, these kind of metrics don't tell the whole story of how a racket plays. I've said that before in terms of RA. But Fonseca, if we look at his specs, 348 grams, 331 swing weight strung. This is with Yonex Poly Tour Strike. Solid string, I don't know the tension. He has a bit of lead tape on this racket, obviously 3, 9, 12, and at the throat uses a leather grip. So kind of old school specs for a semi-modern racket. And very exciting guy, big power, always fun to see these guys that really has, weapons. He did lose to a player who's also having the tournament of his life so far, Mariano Navone from Argentina, who is playing the final against Sebastian Baez. Probably as you're watching this, the publishing time of this video is about the same time as the final. Couldn't really get that in there, but that's closing up the ATP 500 in Rio de Janeiro. In Doha, big congrats to Khachanov. I did make a video about Khachanov's racket. You can search on the channel. It was pretty recent. I have one in my possession. It's one of the test rackets probably. He's still with the H22, but he tried the normal Blade 98 for a while. Talking about Blade Pros and H22s, I don't know what Jakob Mensik is using. It's hard to tell if it's an H22 or a Blade in pictures. I've done this mistake before. Obviously an H22 has a boxier beam, while the 98 is more rounded. And the H22 usually has a little bit more like feeling of mass in the head, at least without being customized. So that's really good to keep in mind. The H22 is also called a Blade Pro now in Wilson lingo. So you know that you can actually buy a Blade Pro from wilson.com. And I will put a link in the description so you can check out. I don't know his specs, so if you're a Czech player, stringer, someone who knows his specs, please let me know in the comments. Aggressive player, big ball striker, hits with great power and some good spin as well. Big serve. Khachanov actually said it was like facing Mensik Isner at times in that final, which was a pretty interesting comment. That's Rio, that's Doha, ATP 250, Rio 500. There's also been a tournament in Los Cabos in Mexico. I predicted Stefanos Tsitsipas to defend his title. He did go pretty far, but came onto the eventual winner, which is also a surprise. Surprise is the theme of this week. Jordan Thompson, who's having a good run in the last few months. Started the year with a big win over Rafa, of course. But he's taking that and brought some nice confidence with him. Had Ruud in the final, but he beat Ruud as well in straight sets. Beat Tsitsipas and Zverev in 3 tight sets. So well done, Jordan. He's definitely on the rise, gonna move up to his highest ranking in his career, around 30, I think it is. So that's pretty exciting for him. Pure drive user. I don't know that much about his specs. Maybe you do. Please let us know in the comments. So that wraps up the ATP tournaments for this week. Some exciting results. Really no predictions went through, sadly. Some of them close, but it's tough to predict tennis. We tried to put predictions, me and my buddy Stefan, on tennisnerd.net, so check it out if you're curious. But with the disclaimer that we sometimes don't have no idea what we're talking about. But tennis is so difficult to predict. Same goes for the tournament in Dubai, the WTA 1000 tournament. I was pretty convinced that Swiatek, coming from a win the week before, would go in and be a threat here, but she was ousted by an eventual finalist who had like an amazing tournament. You got to give huge props to Kalinskaya, who beat her in the semifinals, reached the final where she lost to Italian fighter Paolini in a really, really hard-fought match. So 2 surprises in the final, hard-fought match. Paolini is very strong mentally, it seems like, got it done. But Kalinskaya on the road to the finals beat Ostapenko, Goff and Swiatek. So if you can string along those wins, you have some huge potential for the rest of the year. So it'll be fun to follow Kalinskaya's results. I didn't talk about Sabalenka's racket before. What happened to Sabalenka? Why did she not go far? She lost in the first round to Donna Vekic. Vekic played the best tennis I've seen, at least in the 2 sets in the end. She won 1 set with a bagel, 6-love. Just so impressive. It was just striking the ball, taking Sabalenka's famous pace and just redirecting it. It's tough, obviously, for Sabalenka to come in from the Australian Open. Did take a bit of a break, come in and play good tennis. I think she might need a tournament or 2 to warm up and get going. Maybe it's at the Indian Wells will be her next good tournament. So we will see that. But big ups for Donna Vekic, who played really well. About Sabalenka's racket, another tennis reviewer channel, Tan Tennis. You might already be watching this channel. I will be also talking to Beckett from Tencom in this week's podcast. So you racket nerds, I'm sure you will love that one. These are knowledgeable guys. They love tennis, they love rackets, gear. So check their channels out. And Tan had actually managed to procure 3 Sabalenka rackets, by the sound of it, not extremely expensive either, with some very humane specs. She's not always like the most humane player. She like completely murders the ball, but she has specs that I think most of you could use, and myself would like that too, although I'm venturing more into the area of bigger head sizes. 324 strong weight, 32.7 centimeter balance, so that's 4 points headlight approx. And swing weight, which is around what number I like, with the 3 to 6 approx. She strings it with Luxon All Power in the mains and Luxon Ace in the crosses. The thing to know is that these rackets are obviously a few paint jobs ago, so this was like the countervail edition. I'm not exactly sure which blade she is using under the cosmetic, but she might have tweaked the specs a bit, but it should be in the ballpark. Few pros makes huge spec changes. I mean, you know, with Rafa, he added like a little bit of weight every year to bump up the weight. Sabalenka might have done the same, but this should be very close to what she's currently playing with. And she's one of kind of few players, I would say, that uses like a 98 kind of control racket on the WTA Tour. You see a lot of pure drives, V-Course power rackets, E-zones, like that. So that's Sabalenka's racket. Let's move into this week on the ATP Tour, week 9, 2024. We have Dubai duty-free championships. That's an ATP 500. We have the one in Acapulco, ATP 500, and we have the one in Santiago, Chile, which is ATP 250, 2 hardcore tournaments, clay in Chile. Many top guys are already in Indian Wells. You might have seen Novak and Nadal on the plane here. It was kind of a viral moment. There was a guy in the background who's now famous or infamous, sitting there, kind of not understanding what's going on, which was a little bit funny. So we have those guys already practicing. Rafa already released videos of him in Indian Wells practicing. But a lot of players, they want more practice, they want more matches, more tournaments, more potential prize money. And that's why we have a lot of players in action this week. So let's look at what's going on in the different draws. Let's start in Dubai. Looking at the draw here, we have Medvedev in action. potential upset first round match against Shevchenko, strong player from Kazakhstan. That can be a tricky one. Also interesting to see Nagal, who's now a top 100 player from India, playing against Sonego. That's one to keep in mind. We have Mensik back in action again after his final run last week. We'll see, does he have anything left in the tank to keep pushing this week? Borna Coric is not going to be a pushover in that match by any means. Rublev, who's not been spectacular, he's been solid somewhat, but not really played his seed. Has tough round opponent in Zhang in the first round. Leheshka is another Czech player who's strong and difficult to play. We have Shelby Abdullah, who's next gener wild card as well. And Thomas Mahach, who's having maybe the year of his life, I would say as well. So a lot of good players here in this draw. One match to watch, maybe the first round, at least if you're a little bit nostalgic. It's the Shapovalov-Murray match. Two guys who are desperately looking for form. Murray did win a match last week, which is great. Shapo's also won a match, so maybe they're building, and we'll see if they can perform better towards Indian Wells. That's a fascinating first round encounter with two kind of different styles. Shapo going a lot more aggressive than Murray, more defensive. So interesting tournament. Prediction, who's gonna win? I could see Hurkacz winning this tournament. Rublev not been in the best form. Medvedev, for some reason I'm not feeling him. He has a pretty tough draw, but Hurkacz, I feel, is a guy that silently can move through this draw and win the tournament. We also go to Acapulco in Mexico, where we have Zverev as the top seed here. Holger Rune now with Patrick Mouratoglou, I don't know how to pronounce it. No matter what, he's everywhere. He's probably the best self-promoter in tennis, so kudos to that. But now he's also with Holger Rune again as a coach. So Rune has now found a setup, I guess, that he will stick with, and it might work out for him. So all eyes on that relationship and how that will work out for Rune in his coming tournaments here. Rune, seed number 2, Deminar, seed number 3, still having a good year so far. We have Tsitsipas Safiullin, a tough first round match for Stefanos. Safiullin can beat anyone, but not quite found his stride so far in this year. Tiafoe has struggled as well. He's in the draw, gets Max Purcell in the first round. Keen to hear your thoughts about that. Dan Evans, Ben Shelton, they've played before. That's an exciting matchup. Ruud Eubanks, there's so many good matches to look forward to this week in tennis. I'm actually going to go with Ruud winning this event final last week. I think when he starts to build confidence and matches, like with most tennis players, he is tough to beat, and he is surprisingly good on hard courts. Also a warning, of course, for Taylor Fritz, who has played really well so far, won tournaments, and but has a tough first round opponent in Arnaldi, and that could be a first round upset, I would say. Arnaldi is a tough one to play. And Jordan Thompson, of course, who comes from his first ATP Tour title. Can he keep it up? And we go to the clay courts in Chile, and home player Nicolas Jarry, also top seed here. I'm quite surprised by Arthur Phil's scheduling, actually. I think he's the weakest on clay. That's just my feeling and opinion based on some stats. Maybe he's trying to improve, but he's really done a clay court run preparation here. And he's not been really performing so well. Lost to Fonseca, which is no shame in that, but it was pretty bad loss, 6-4, 6-love or something. So yeah, I'm a bit curious about his scheduling here and how he planned this trip, because he's a very up-and-coming player, young and promising. But yeah, playing against these clay quarters, these very strong clay quarters, is kind of be hard on your confidence, really. We have Diaz Acosta in the draw. How will he do? He won a tournament already, as you know. We have some interesting Italians, as usual. Darderi, wild card. We have Passaro. The Italians are everywhere now, also on the WTA Tour. And we have Joao Fonseca from Brazil. We'll see how he can do. Yeah, I mean, now he will have more eyes on him, and also players will be a little bit more alert. Sometimes when you don't know, like, oh, who's this guy? You might not be 100% mentally ready for that match, and then when he brings it to you, you're like, wow, and then it's too late. So they will be adjusting. These players are like sharks, so they will see, okay, this guy's good. He's 17. He has maybe a lack of experience. Let me use that in some way. And we'll see also Navone, how he handles the final, whether he wins the first tournament or comes in as a finalist. Starts against Varillas, which is not an easy match. I would say Jarry at home. With the way he played, he beat Alcaraz and stuff like that a week ago. I think it can be his draw here. Nicolas Jarry to win the Movistar Chile Open. On the WTA Tour, we have the San Diego Open. Jessica Pegula is the favorite, and don't really know much about her form at the moment. Haven't seen how she's been performing. We have wildcard in Karo-Wozniacki, and that could be interesting as well. She's always dangerous, of course, although she hasn't quite reached her previous level. How will Donna Vekic play after this Sabalenka win? It's getting difficult to predict tournaments on both tours. They're quite open, all of them now. Like WTA has been open for a while, but also ATP now is quite open. So it's difficult to really come up with any reliable predictions. But if I would put one in here, I would say Haddad Maia to win this title. She's seed number 2. Good draw with some potential qualifiers. Bit of a gut feel, but we go for that sometimes. We're also in Austin, Texas. Not as strong in this tournament, but some interesting players. Danielle Collins is playing her last season on the tour. She is seeded 3 here. Potential winner of this tournament, I would say. Anna-Helena Kalinina from Ukraine is the number 1 seed. It will be interesting to follow her through this draw. Sloane Stephens, so far this year. Very, very open tournament, as I said about the last one. This one is even more open, in my opinion. Alicia Parks, not quite played maybe to potential so far this year. So I will go that Danielle Collins, who has had some good results, inspired by her upcoming retirement. I think it's time for her to win this Austin WTA 250. Looks like she has a decent draw as well. So those are the predictions. Did anything tickle your fancy? Have any comments? You know where to put them. That's it for this week in tennis. If you need more news, more information, rackets and string guide reviews, you go to tennisnerd.net. Please subscribe to the channel if you don't mind. And you can also support by joining patreon.com/tennisnerd, where you get unique content every week. And there's also some rackets for sale and so on Patreon. That's it. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.